Hello, and here we are at Perfectly Paranormal, episode 113. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today you get to join me as we explore Amy's question. Amy wants to know about pareidolia. She wants to know, what is it, how we see it, and does people's fear of ghosts and darkness trigger them to see images of faces in objects or photos? Is my mind playing tricks on me? And I'd have to say, I had never heard of pareidolia until I started work as a paranormal tour guide. I assumed that seeing faces in objects was just something that everybody does, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit later. Now, when I was a tour guide, and sometimes you'd be assessing the photos of the previous tours where we worked in this haunted location here in Tasmania, we'd take group photos and the lady who ran the tours would put them on Facebook. And sometimes when you zoomed in on these photos, you could see the faces of spirits or other entities behind the people, around the people. It's like they were lining up to have their photo taken. It was really quite lovely. But when I questioned this with some of the other people in the groups, and I would often hear, oh, that's just pareidolia. That's just your mind wanting to see faces where there are none. Or I'd be listening back to a spirit box recording or an EVP, and I would clearly hear a word or a name or the answer to a question, and it would be fobbed off again as just some random noise that I wanted to hear. So what is pareidolia? So when I looked up definitions online, I went to wordhippo.com, which is my favourite thesaurus, but they also do definitions, and this is what they said about visual pareidolia. It is the tendency to interpret a vague stimulus as something known to the observer, such as interpreting marks on Mars as canals, which I found as kind of an odd reference. But also they mentioned seeing shapes in clouds, which is a bit more something that people actually do. And livescience.com defines auditory pareidolia as the phenomenon of hearing intelligible voices or noises in meaningless background noise. And there were also references online that said that pareidolia used to be thought of in medical circles as connected to hallucinations, psychosis, and mental health disorders, such as schizophrenia and bipolar disorders. And one resource, this is the connection that I like. This is where my brain goes. And I'm going to expand on that as we get down into the examples. One resource that I linked in the notes suggests that people with creative brains are more likely to experience pareidolia, as their brains are wired with creativity and creative potential. Now, this creative potential gets them to look at problem solving, and they use flexibility and original thinking. They're not closed-minded. They don't use limited thinking like a lot of people do. A lot of people just fob stuff off and they don't think about it, or they don't want to think about it, or it frightens them, which is a very good point. So I like to think of it as being open to new perspectives and possibilities. And I'm going to share one way that I did this as a kid, which I sometimes still do as an adult, and it really does give me a giggle. Now, visual pareidolia, we're going to look at this first. I've broken it into two categories as I see it. Now, category number one, the faces that people see in clouds or rock formations on the moon and even in everyday objects, like the very well-known face of Jesus in a piece of toast, or the random facial expressions that you sometimes see when you're cutting up vegetables at dinner time. That is really quite funny. It really does give me a bit of a giggle. And sometimes you can even see faces in just objects around the house. Like I've got a cheese grater, which has these funny little two holes and a mouth on the side where you can grate slices. Well, not really grate. You can make slices of cheese. And I look at it and it just It just makes me have a bit of a laugh. And if we're talking about clouds, people often put on social media photos of clouds with a particular angelic formation or a heart or something that means something to the person. Now, if you think about clouds, clouds are forever changing in shape, and that's due to environmental shifts in the wind and the weather, and our brains can sometimes look for familiar shapes. There's also another point that I'm going to expand on later, is that sometimes your spiritual support team will share information with you through using our environment. So there might be an angel in the cloud. You might need a bit extra love. That's why you're seeing a love heart in the cloud formation. And then you look back again and it's gone. It was that moment of being shown something that you needed. So we'll talk about that a bit later. Now, people also see visual pareidolia in rock faces, rock formations. Now, these are shapes that are created by erosion, the natural layout of the land and the angles that you perceive them on. Also too, tree trunk structures and shapes are often created by just the natural formation and the environmental factors. An example, this is the example I wanted to share with you, and I've never ever forgot it. It's really, really quite funny. And all of you out there listening, you're going to start doing this too, so don't be surprised, and you really will get a laugh out of it. I've never been much of a cloud gazer. It's just not my thing. I'm just not going to lie on the ground and look up at the clouds. I find that a waste of time. That's just me. But I used to have a lot of fun as a kid looking at the faces that you can see on the front and the rear ends of cars. Now, you're all sitting there going, what does she mean? Well, when I explain it, the next time you're out driving or you're a passenger, probably better when you're a passenger, or even if you're sitting at the traffic lights, just look at the cars in front of you. You can see faces that are created by the locations and the shapes of the lights, the grille, the locations of the indicator lights, the bumper bars, and the overall shape of the car. It's just so funny. I really did love doing that as a kid because we went on a lot of long drives and my creative brain needed something to do. And once you see these car faces, you can never unsee them. And you'll start noticing and comparing all these different car faces. It's so funny. I'm not going to get caught on that. Let's move on to number 2. Now this is where I'm more prone to go with visual pareidolia these days. So as you know, I talk about it all the time. We have spirits and paranormal beings in our Earth environment. Remember, all the dimensions overlap all at the same time in the same place. So we're going to see different spirits or beings or whatever's going on around you and in that particular location where you are. So spirits and dark beings' faces can sometimes be seen in photos, especially when you zoom in. I don't go looking for this. I don't spend hours and hours and hours of time wasted looking and zooming in at photos. I really got better things to do. But occasionally there will be a little face or a shape or a colour that will pop out when I'm looking at a photo. So this is another example. I was looking at a photo of a woman and her daughter on Facebook one day. I wasn't specifically looking for pareidolia images, but I was admiring the building behind this woman. And as my focus kind of shifted, I saw something rather interesting. So I downloaded the photo and zoomed in. I saw a white wispy shape near the child's head. Now I zoomed in a bit further. And oh my goodness, in the dark shadow area, I easily saw a pale white head with an open mouth and arms peeking out from behind the child. Now this was distinctly different to the shapes in the brickwork that was behind them that I initially started to look at. Because you could quite easily create random faces created by the holes in the bricks and the mortar and the shadows, etc. Your brain may force you to see faces. But this was something else. This was an entity that was travelling around with this particular woman and her child. And I know why, and I'm not going to share that, but I just thought it was really, really fascinating. And if you want to see that image, it's actually in the thumbnail for this episode. I thought it was so fascinating, I had to share it. Have a look at this photo and tell me what you can see. And these people are all into the paranormal. So they're like, oh, if she's sharing a photo, got to be something paranormal in it. And when they zoomed in, it was like, OMG. There was this little entity travelling around with these people. Now, it's quite common. I talk about paranormal beings being attached to people all the time, but you don't usually see them. But have a look at the thumbnail if you're on YouTube. But it's also on my podcast thumbnail that I share through Instagram. Before continuing our spooky content, I'm excited to announce that you can now text my podcast. Yes, indeed. With a question or a comment, or even suggest a paranormal topic for a future episode. The feature doesn't allow me to respond to your text, but I will indeed give you a shout out in a future episode. And if you're interested in leaving a text, you'll find the text link in the show notes. So let's get back to our episode. So let's now have a look at auditory pareidolia. Now, I'm not going to talk about it too much. You can all imagine what it is, and I shared it earlier in my example about the haunted location. Now, I've got 5 examples for you that might be auditory pareidolia or not. You have to make up your own mind. But number 4 is my favourite. Now, number 1, I'm in bed some nights and I don't sleep very well. I'm a very light sleeper. So sometimes I think that my body's asleep but my brain's awake. So is that sleep paralysis? That's a whole nother thing, but we're not going to go there. But I often hear someone say Mum or Anna. Now, there's someone else that does live here. They're not going to be prone to saying that at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, I just lie there and listen, and I don't hear it again. I hear it once. So is this someone in the house? Is this a spirit in the house? Is this a dark entity? Dark entities don't usually talk. They're more prone to pinching, punching, pushing. You hear me talk about it all the time. We do have noisy neighbours, though. We've got some new neighbours. So the mum might be someone outside my house or in a neighbouring yard. But the other thing is, it could be a spirit presence in my home wanting help. My name used to come through the spirit box all the time when I was working as a tour guide, because the spirits know you do transitioning. They like your energy. If they like you, they're going to use your name. They're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to let you know that they acknowledge you. Number 2, sometimes I go to bed asking a question and I wake up hearing the answer. Now, this could be a spiritual thing. We're going to expand on that. When I hear the answer, it's always outside my head. And it's usually kind of, I don't know, how can I put it? About 20 centimetres from my head above my left ear. Like, it happens a lot. That seems to be the spot where they come to, the they being my spiritual helpers, spiritual team. That is where I get my answers. Now, I don't share a bed with anyone anymore. I sleep by myself. So it's not a human voice. And it's not the other person sleeping in this house, because how is that other person going to be answering a question that I've asked in my head when I was going to bed? So you've got to do all the debunking. This is what you do all the time. Even though I'm a paranormal addict, work with paranormal every day, I always do the debunking, because sometimes there are rational answers. So most likely to me, because I've been working on raising my vibration for a very long time, it is my spiritual helpers sharing an answer with me. Now, number 3, I've been at markets. I do a lot of spiritual markets, spiritual festivals, spiritual events. And I've been behind my stall. I've either been doing card reading or numerology or selling items, or usually all the 3 above. And I've just been sitting there waiting for someone to come for a reading. So I've got my head down and I'm writing something. And as clear as a bell, just like someone is standing very close to me, I will hear someone say my name. And it's said with authority, and I look up and there's no one there. Now, yes, there's probably, 20 to 50 other people in the room, but they're all busy, all doing their own thing. The voice is so close, it's like someone is standing on the other side of a trestle table which is maybe a metre from where I'm sitting. But I look up instantly and there is no one there. I had this happen one day before I had, what would I call it? A change in direction of my work when I started to move into the house clearing work, more on a professional level. And I heard this very defined voice and I'm like, that's interesting. I wondered if that was a new spirit guide coming to help me as part of my team doing the house clearing work. That is a very big possibility. So number 4, this is my favourite. I do enjoy using sound recording devices and spirit boxes and paranormal equipment. It's nice to get that instant gratification for something that my body is feeling. I'm seeing a light flash or I'm hearing a voice. And it just makes me happy. It's my thing. Everyone has their thing that they love and they enjoy doing. It's just my thing. The problem with it is I have ringing in my ears. I have tinnitus. So I think it's probably part medical, part me hearing the higher vibrations in our environment. It's a bit of both. So clear hearing isn't one of my best attributes. And I often will share recordings or I'll do spirit box sessions with other people and we'll all compare what we can hear. And this can be 2, 3, 4 other people. And we're all sitting in a room, we're all sitting there quietly, listening to the spirit box, asking questions, and we are hearing defined voices, words, answers to what we were asking. Now, you can't tell me that that's pareidolia. That is not auditory pareidolia. It isn't the power of suggestion either. It just isn't. We are clearly hearing spirits' names, our names. We're hearing their ages. We're hearing maybe a message. I was told one day to calm down and be patient. Now, the word that came through was patient. And I said to my friend, did you hear that? And she went, patient. And she looked at me and I went, oh, I'm too excited, aren't I? I get very excited doing paranormal work. So funny. It is a really fun activity to use these paranormal devices. I do love my spirit box. So lastly, have you ever been thinking about a personal struggle or you've had a problem that you just need help with? Or you need inspiration and you're just not getting it through your normal channels. It's just not happening. Well, our spiritual support team, which is guides, angels, archangels and so forth, use our environment to communicate with us, to share messages. They might send, say, a message in a song on the radio, or you're listening to YouTube or you see a video come up. This is what happens to me. I'll see a video come up on that sidebar on the right-hand side, and I'm like, oh, I've been asking about that. I click on it, I listen to the video or watch the video. It might be 10 minutes long, and 6 minutes in, there's the answer to my question. It's just how they get to us sometimes. Because as humans, we have so much crap going in, on and around in our heads all the time. We have so many activities, routines. It is what it is. So sometimes to get through all of that internal monkey chatter and all the baggage that we have, they'll use visual stimulus and auditory stimulus to communicate with us. So what do you think? Have you ever heard a random voice with no rational explanation? Or seen a vivid face or a full-bodied apparition of someone looming in the background of a photo? Have you heard a message from a past loved one that's come through the radio and it just makes you feel so good? Are you a believer, a skeptic, or do you sit on the fence? It's okay to be any one of those three. So there's always going to be rationally minded skeptics when it comes to non-scientific attributes in our environment. And that's great. I love skeptics. Skeptics challenge us, they really do, to delve deeper and actually unpack what we see, what we hear in a multitude of ways when it comes to the unseen paranormal world around us. If you like the content of this episode today, please think about leaving me a rating and a review. What reviews do is they let other people know your thoughts about my supernatural subject matter. People love reading reviews, and we're spreading the word about the real paranormal world around us. I would really appreciate it. So thank you for joining me today, and don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.